Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year everyone! So today's video is going to be about that little conundrum that's been going on at the International Space Station that kicked off a couple of weeks before Christmas. So, winding back the clock a little bit before that, in September of 2022, a Soyuz spacecraft MS-22 took off from the Russian-operated Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. On board were two Russian cosmonauts, Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin, and one NASA astronaut, Frank Rubio.
The second umbilical has retracted. This will initiate the auto sequence start. T-minus 10 seconds and counting. We have engine start. Turbo pumps coming up to flight speed.
Turbo pumps, flight speed,
and liftoff. A sunset start to the mission of Rubio, Prokopyev, and Petelin to the International Space Station.
The plan was to hang out at the International Space Station for about 6 months, do some astronaut things, and then come back in March of 2023 in that same Soyuz spacecraft. However, on December 14th,
Houston, we have a problem.
The Soyuz MS-22 started spewing a spray of white particles into space. Follow-up scans of the Soyuz showed that there was a hole in its radiator exterior. And when you look out your window into space and see this, that's not good. The particles turned out to be coolant from the spacecraft, which was believed to have been struck by a micrometeoroid. And this leak raised some serious questions about whether part of the capsule could overheat during flight, basically making the craft unsafe to transport astronauts back to Earth. The ISS crew was in no immediate danger from the situation, but the concern comes that if the ISS has to be evacuated for whatever reason, they are basically one lifeboat short right now. And on top of that, these three guys suddenly have no ride home. And this tiny hole is not easily fixable. The executive director of human space flight programs at Roscosmos, which is basically Russia's version of NASA, is a guy named Sergei Krikalev, who himself is a former cosmonaut who has spent over 300 days on the International Space Station. He said the damage was caused by a small particle about 1 millimeter in diameter. But that particle was traveling at about 15,000 miles per hour. The location of the leak at the end of the Soyuz, farthest from the docking port, made it almost impossible to attempt this repair, because not only would you need to repair this tiny hole farthest away from the station, but also you would need to refill the radiator with a liquid coolant. Krikalev said that the procedure was so difficult and so risky that much less risk would be to just replace the vehicle. So the plan became to replace the vehicle, but how? And with what vehicle? Because, you know, can't just Amazon Prime a spacecraft. One plan involved using the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule that is also currently docked with the ISS after flying 4 astronauts to the space station in October. Joel Montalbano, the ISS program manager at NASA's Johnson Space Center, said discussions had been underway with SpaceX about using the Crew Dragon capsule to fly home other astronauts aboard the ISS. And the idea was basically that they would secure the crew members in the cargo hold, which even Joel admitted was not the dream scenario and was really only meant to be used for an emergency situation, like an evacuation. But in the end, Roscosmos decided to send up an unmanned Soyuz, MS-23, on February 20th to rescue the astronauts. But now, instead of coming home in March, their stay will be extended by a few extra months. And our friend Joel at NASA said, "We're not calling it a rescue Soyuz, we're calling it a replacement Soyuz." And while it's true that the crew is currently safe and sound on the ISS, I'm just gonna say it's a bit dodgy when you're on a space station 250 miles above the Earth with no definitive ride home. Like, no, it's cool, our ride's coming. Oh my God, NASA. So while NASA may not be calling it a rescue, too dramatic for them, ironically. Have you seen your own trailers? I am calling it a rescue because nobody wants to return to Earth in a cargo hold What? The original crew for the MS-23, the replacement Soyuz, obviously have now had their flight delayed, so it is unclear when they will make their trip to the International Space Station. And as for the MS-22, the Soyuz spacecraft that is currently leaking, Roscosmos says that it will probably return to Earth unmanned sometime in March. They don't seem to think it's going to blow up on re-entry or anything, but it is going to get very, very toasty in there. So they are planning on bringing back equipment and experiments that are not temperature sensitive. And I'm sure they're going to be doing a lot of this. So that's it for the video, guys. I will be keeping an eye on this story because I think it's interesting and a bit hairy. But tell me what you think. If you were one of the astronauts and you saw this non-leaking spacecraft coming for you, would you see it as a rescue or a replacement? Because I know what I would think. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.